Hi, I'm Emily from the Bowen Branch Library. Welcome back to our virtual middle grade reader book club. I hope you've been enjoying it so far. We are working our way through the Scorpio Races by Maggie Steifvater with permission from Scholastic, so thank you very much, Scholastic. We're going to be reading chapter 49 and 50 today. If you are playing along with our virtual summer reading program or the Detroit 313 reading challenge, make sure that you log this as some of your reading for today. It totally counts. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, go ahead and check out the DetroitPublicLibrary.org website, and it's right there on the home page. Keep an eye out for virtual summer reading or Detroit 313 challenge. I hope that you enjoy this section. Make sure that you answer our discussion questions. They'll be in the description box of the video. You can either have a discussion in the comments or you can use it to talk amongst your family if you're listening as a group. Chapter 49. Sean. The morning of the Malvern Youngstock auction dawns exceptionally fair, too kind for October. I lost too much sleep after I left Puck behind last night, so I snatch an extra half hour to steel me for what's to come, and then I dress and head down to the yard. There'll be no riding corps this morning, none of my usual stable work. The warm weather that would make the beach bearable is lost to the auction. The yard is buzzing, full of mainland men holding champagne at 9 in the morning and ignoring wives wearing absurd furs too warm for the weather. Every so often, the sound of a horse whinny peals out above their voices. These tourists are a tidier sort than those who arrived in time for the Scorpio races, more kin to the gentlemen I'd seen staying at the hotel than to any local. Every man Malvern employs is out in force today. This auction funds the yard for the rest of the year. I've only had my feet on solid ground for about a minute when George Hawley catches my elbow. "Sean Kendrick, I thought you'd be out there among the beasts." "Not today. The truth is that I'd rather be down there with the grooms leading the horses into the ring for the buyers to look at. Instead, I am to stay always within earshot of Benjamin Malvern, so that if he catches my eye or tips a champagne glass in my direction, I'm available to sing the praises of whichever horse is about to go onto the auction block. Today I'm to sell myself, not them. I'm the novelty." "Oh, hence the sharp apparel. I nearly didn't recognize you in that suit coat." "I bought it to be buried in." George Hawley claps my shoulders. "Planning on staying trim or dying young then? Such a wise head on such young shoulders. If your Kate Connolly hasn't seen you in that suit coat, she should." I doubt very much that Puck would be affected by the sight of me looking as if I'm wanting only for a pocket watch. If she preferred this version of me, it would be unfortunate in any case. I lay a hand flat on the vest and smooth the buttons. "It's such a fine thing to see you uncomfortable, Mr. Kendrick," Hawley says. "She has got you bothered. Now tell me which horses to buy." Bothered isn't the word for it. I can't focus. I need to be on car instead of simmering in this coat. I say Metal and Findebar. Findebar. Can't even say it, much less remember it. Did Malvern show her to me? I say, probably not. She's a broodmare, getting a little old, so he's selling her. I look up in time to see Malvern arrive with a posse of potential buyers following him. They look delighted by the island weather and these island racers and their droll owner. Malvern spots me and I see him filing away my location for future reference. Hawley exchanges a look with Malvern that is not entirely cordial. "Oh, I'm not in the market for baby makers." She drops nothing but winners. "What is that look there?" Hawley frowns as a groom leads by a yearling. "It's my look for broodmares." "No, you and Malvern. What did you quarrel about?" He rubs the back of his neck and refuses the tray of champagne offered him. "While I was wandering in my altogether, I discovered one of his old flames. I didn't know that beforehand. I think he fancies me a playboy now." He looks hurt. I don't tell Hawley that I'd shared that impression. "I would have thought all was well now that you're here at the auction." "All will be wonderful once I buy something," Hawley notes, glancing over his shoulder. "Metal and the baby dropper. I don't mean to buy a broodmare, you know. We have fields of them. Can't you merely cross-herder your red stallion and sell me the product of that happy union next year?" "Getting a Kobalushka into the line is not as easy as all that," I reply. "Sometimes mares are mares to them, and sometimes mares are meals. If there is a rhyme or a reason to why an Ushka stallion would take to a horse mare, or why an Ushka mare would take to a horse stallion, I haven't discovered it yet. There are Malvern horses with Kobalushka blood in them, but it is dilute and old, showing up in odd ways. Horses who love to swim like Fundamental, fillies with shrieking whinnies, colts with long slender ears. That," says Hawley bitterly, "is precisely the way it works with humans." I consider whether this means that his blind lover has jilted him or the other way around, but I'm distracted by a glimpse of Mutt Malvern among the buyers. He's talking and gesturing to a filly standing in the ring as if he knows anything about her, and the feathered and leathered mainlanders listen and nod their heads because he's the son of the owner, so of course he knows something. Holly follows my gaze, and for a moment we stand there, shoulder to shoulder. "Why, good morning," Holly says broadly. And when I see who he addresses, it makes me glad that I hadn't spoken against Mutt. Benjamin Malvern stands just behind us. "Mr. Holly, Mr. Kendrick," Malvern replies. "Mr. Holly, I trust that you found something that interests you." He eyes me. Holly's smile is wide and abusively American, rows and rows of white glowing teeth. "Benjamin, so many things about Thisbe interest me." "Anything of the four-legged variety?" "I'm looking at Medal and Findebar," Holly says. Despite his earlier protests, he pronounces Findebar without a stumble. Malvern says, "Findebar drops nothing but winners." My mouth plays at the sound of my own words from someone else's lips. Holly nods his head toward me. "So I've heard. Why are you selling her then?" "Just getting a little long in the tooth." "Something to be said for age and cunning, though," Holly remarks. "I mean, you should know. Ha! This is a fine country full of fine people. Oh, I see we have all the Malverns here now. And there's Matthew, looking like his father." This last is because Mutt Malvern has found his way within earshot and stands there, deep in conversation with a man about a filly. I think he's trying to look useful in front of either me or his father. I can hear what he's saying, and it sounds ridiculous, but the man is nodding. Malvern's gaze is on Mutt. His expression is difficult to discern, but certainly nothing that could be called pride. "So I'll confess," Holly says, "that I'm quite taken with Sean Kendrick here. You have quite a right hand in him." Malvern's gaze shifts swiftly to me, and then Holly, an eyebrow raised. "I hear that you were making a level effort to expart him." But his loyalty was too strong," Holly says. The smile he turns on me is ferocious in its sincerity, which is just disappointing. "You treat him too well, I suppose." Nearby, Mutt glances in my direction, his eyes narrowed, and I can see that he has caught wind of the subject at hand. "Mr. Kendrick's been with us for close to a decade," Malvern says, "since his father died and I took him in." In just that phrase, he paints a picture of an orphaned boy sitting at his kitchen table, raised side by side with Mutt, reveling in the pleasures of being a Malvern. "So he's practically a son," Holly says. "That explains the bond. These horses all bear his handprint, don't they? Seems to me he's the logical heir to the Malvern yard, if you were asking me." Benjamin Malvern had been looking at his son, who was staring back at him, but when Holly finishes, Malvern's eyes sweep over me in my suit, and he purses his lips. "In many ways, Mr. Holly, I think that is very true." He looks back up to Mutt and adds, "In most ways." I can't think that he means it. I can only think that he says it because he's playing a game with Holly, or because he means for Mutt to hear it, which Mutt clearly does. Holly exchanges a glance with me, and I can see that he's as startled as I am. "Unfortunately," Malvern says, turning away from Mutt, "the blood doesn't always come through." He eyes me, and suddenly I realize that I have never once known what he's truly thinking behind those deep, clever-set eyes. I know nothing of him aside from his horses and the little cold flat above the stable addition. I know that he owns much of Thisbe, but not which parts. I know that he rode once, but doesn't now, and I know that his son is a bastard, but not if the mother still lives on the island. I know that I win the races for him, and every year he takes over 9/10 of the purse as he would for any man in his employ. Malvern says, "Mr. Kendrick was born on a horse and he'll die on one, and maybe that's not something you can breed for. He's one of those rare men who can make a horse work for him, but never asks for more than they have. If he's told you to put your money on Metal and Findebar, then you'd be a fool not to. Good day, Mr. Holly." Malvern nods at Holly and then strides away. In his absence, Holly says something to me that I miss because I am looking at Mutt. Written on his face is furious rejection and disbelief. In just that moment, it doesn't matter that both he and I have done our part to earn Malvern's words. It's only that they were wounding that matters. I watch his stare become fearsome as he holds my gaze. Something demanding and uncompromising claws inside Mutt Malvern. He pushes his way back toward the house. "Sean Kendrick," Holly says. "What is it you're thinking?" "That this doesn't sit easy with me," I reply. Holly looks at the space Mutt has left behind and advises, "I would bolt your door tonight." Chapter 50. Puck. In the morning, before I head to the cliffs to train and possibly find Sean, Finn and I go to Dory Maud's, him on his bicycle, me on Dove. The truth of it is that Finn means to do some odd jobs for them if he can, and I'm hoping against hope that Dory's sold some more teapots, because we've one lump of butter but no bread to stick around it, and no flour to make bread. We trudge into Scarmouth. I lead Dove at the moment to make certain she doesn't turn a leg in a bit of uneven cobble. Finn leads the bicycle to make certain he can stare into Paulson's shop without falling off a moving vehicle. We both look mournfully in the bakery window as we pass, though I'd sworn to myself that I wouldn't. Nothing says orphans like two kids breaking their necks looking at trays of November cakes and platters of shaped cookies and lovely soft loaves of bread still steaming in the window they're next to. Finn and I sigh at the same time and continue on our way to Fathom and Sons. I tie Dove out front and Finn tells his bicycle to stay. I'm not sure if the shop will be open or not. Elizabeth and Dory Maud might be at the booth by the cliff path instead. But the door opens, and when we push inside I'm surprised to find both Dory Maud and Elizabeth there, as well as a handsome blond man who is exclaiming over a stone grave pillow that Martin Devlin found in his field last year when he was digging for potatoes. "Really put the head on this at a burial," he says. Finn gives me a look. I eye the stranger. He's a foreigner, and in his 30s maybe, but in the best possible way. I think the word for it is dashing or dapper or something like that. He holds a red flat cap in his hand. "Ah, Puck," says Dory Maud. "Puck Connolly?" Finn and I exchange another look. "Oh, but you haven't met?" Dory Maud says. "Mr. Holly, this is Puck Connolly. Puck, this is Mr. George Holly." "Now I'm pleased to meet you," I said crossly. "I was just dropping Finn off here," and Elizabeth sidles up to me and places her claws in my skin. "Just a moment, I need to steal her," Elizabeth chirps. She whisks me into the back room and shoves closed the door behind us. So it is just us and 4 chairs and a table bigger than the floor and an audience of boxes filled with Dory Maud's love letters to sailors. We are nose to nose, and Elizabeth smells like a shipload of English roses. "Puck Connolly, you be your absolute level best to that man." "I was being nice." "No, you weren't. I saw your face. I'm no fool. We need to encourage him. That American is richer than the Queen, and we think he means to take a piece of Thisbe back with him." I hope he's taking the fertility statue. "What is it you're trying to shove off on him?" Elizabeth leans against the door to ensure no one interrupts. "Annie." "Annie? If you're going to repeat everything I say, I'll give your tongue to him as well. Does Annie know about this? If only you had the brains to match your looks." Elizabeth realizes she's still holding my arm and releases me. "Now you go out there and be charming, as you can." I scowl and follow her back into the main room. All eyes turn toward me. Finn has somehow ended up holding the stone burial pillow. "Done, ladies?" Dory Maud asks. I can't think of the last time she's used the word ladies to refer to something other than our chickens. "Mr. Holly was just expressing his interest in you, Puck." Perhaps my alarm is written upon my face because Holly adds quickly, "Sean Kendrick's spoken of you." "You didn't mention that before," Dory Maud says, looking at me. "Puck, do you know what would be a wonderful thing is if you took Mr. Holly and found him some breakfast?" "Oh," Holly and I protest at the same time. "I have Dove outside," I say. Holly glances at me and says meaningfully, "And I was going to go watch the training." I decide that I like him. It helps that he's dapper, but the clever cinches it. "Then you should take him by Paulson's to get him one of the November cakes. Of course, Annie knows how to make them as well, even better than Paulson's," Dory Maud says. "She was just saying that she'd like to make them for you, Mr. Holly, but of course there's been no time. If you get them at Paulson's, you can carry your breakfast with you." Holly's smile lights the room. Dory Maud and Elizabeth are both blown back fairly by the sheen of it. "Will you let me buy you one of these things, Miss Connolly?" Holly asks. "And your brother too?" I think I may die from the stinging power of the knowing gaze Elizabeth wields. It is a gaze that says, "I told you he was a rich American with money to spend." I glare at her and Dory Maud. "Certainly. And Dory, if you give me a bit of change, I'll buy some extra. For Annie." We momentarily battle with our eyes, and then Dory Maud relents and gives me a few coins. And so it is 2 triumphant Connollys who lead George Holly from Fathom and Sons, Finn on one side and me on the other. Holly watches me untie Dove with great interest, and I watch him watching me with even greater interest. The way his eye travels along Dove, hock to stifle placement to top line to shoulder angle, tells me that he's not just a casual tourist. I wonder how well he knows Sean. "You know," Finn says on the way back to Paulson's, cheerful now that he's getting food, "that Annie is blind, right?" "Not entirely," Holly corrects him. "Not entirely blind, I mean." Is that what they told you? Finn exclaimed. I stare at them. Who is this person who can make Finn so loud so quickly? It is, Holly says warmly. He inclines his head toward Finn and asks, Now, what exactly is a November cake? He asks it with such genuine curiosity that of course Finn has to speak even more, describing the moist crumb, the nectar that seeps from the base of it, the icing that soaks into the cake before you can lick it off. It is probably the kindest thing I have ever seen in my life, George Holly asking my brother about baked goods. When Holly glances to me, I give him a sharp look, which I realize might not fall under being as charming as possible, but I'm not sure that clever, kind George Holly could possibly be played as easily as Dory Maud and Elizabeth think. Together we stroll into Paulson's. I try to maintain an air of dignity, but it's difficult to not be overcome by the odour that hangs in the air. It's all cinnamon and honey and yeast. Paulson's is on a corner and made of windows and light. The walls are lined with unstained wooden shelves with open backs, so the sunlight comes unimpeded through the glass panes and makes big squares of gold on the floor. Every shelf towers with bread and cookies, cinnamon twists and November cakes, scones and biscuits. The only wall not so anointed is the back wall behind the counter, which is lined with sacks of flour waiting to become bread. I can smell even the flour because there's so much of it, and it's sweet and palatable all on its own. Everything is golden and white and honey and nectar in here, and I think that possibly I could live in this building and sleep among the flour sacks. Paulson's is crowded today, as always, with both customers and housewives who hold better conversations near someone else's baking. George Holly gathers stares and whispers as he and Finn move along the shelves and then into the long line. He fits in perfectly, as blonde as a November cake himself. Your aunt is a strong woman, George Holly says to me. Dory Maud? That's the one. If Dory Maud had told him we're related, I might take up spitting again. She's not my aunt. He is graciously apologetic. Oh, I'm sorry. You seem so familiar with her. I didn't mean to overstep. Everyone on Thisbe is familiar, I reply. Stay here for a month and she'll be your aunt as well. This makes Finn smile at the floor. My, says George Holly. What a laden promise that is. We move forward in line. Finn's head is going back and forth like an owl's from tray to tray as he weighs the merits of the different possibilities. Mr. Kendrick tells me that your pony has quite a set of legs on her, Holly says conversationally. I hear someone behind the counter say, bright red hat. Horse. She's 15 hands. Horse. He said that? Oh, excuse me, madam, Holly says. This is because Mary Finch has just squeezed between him and a shelf to get to the window, and her hand went somewhat untoward on his person, a most fortunate accident on her part. Holly moves towards the counter and gathers his dignity back up to himself before he turns back to me. Word on the beach is he said that if your horse, goes straight while the Kabelushka go right, you might get somewhere. I wonder if Sean really believes this. I wonder if I really believe that. I must, or else why am I doing this? I reckon that's the plan. If we're being familiar, how well is it you know Sean Kendrick? Mary Finch squeezes back by George Holly, and his eyes go round for a moment as he receives some more Scarmouth hospitality. I try not to laugh. Oh, he says. Well, I was here to look at Malvern horses and we met. He's a strange old bird, which is to say that I like him quite a bit. Finn taps on the counter to draw Holly's attention to the cakes they've just set out under the glass. For a brief moment their faces wear the same boyish, wistful longing that's not tempered by the knowledge that the line until they get to the cakes is only 6 feet long. In the interests of familiarity, Holly says, how well do you know him? My cheeks redden, which infuriates me. Curse this ginger hair and everything that comes with it. My father said once that if I didn't have my mother's ginger hair, I wouldn't blush or curse as easily, which I thought was unfair. I hardly ever curse or blush, even though I've had plenty of days that required both. I'm a quite level person, I think, given the circumstances. Finn's eyeballing me, curious about the answer to Holly's question. I say, a little. We're friendly. Like you and your aunt? Holly asks. When I scowl at him, he suggests, like cousins? Like siblings? I don't know him as well as Mary Finch knows you, I tell him. When he looks perplexed, I make a little pinching motion, and he winces as if his underpants feel her attention once more. Fair enough, Holly says. We stand at the counter, and Bev Paulson swaps money for cakes. Finn buys an obscene number of cinnamon twists with Dory Maud's money. Once we actually have them in our hands and stand outside the door where Dove is tied, Finn makes George Holly unwrap one of the cakes so that Finn can observe his reaction. Holly takes a bite, honey slipping over his lip, and closes his eyes in pleasure so pronounced that it's hard to tell if it's exaggerated for Finn's benefit. "I'm told," Holly says, "that food tastes better in your memories. I don't see how I can improve on this in a memory." Finn is pleased by this. It's as if he made them himself. I see something bittersweet in Holly's expression, though. I think, possibly, that this island has begun to get its hooks into him, and this makes me like him even more. Anyone Thisbe chooses to seduce can't be half bad. Holly asks, "Finn, would you be so kind as to ask them for another bag so we can separate these into 2 parcels? And if I give you this, would you fetch me another twist to take back to my room? Get another one for yourself, too, so your other hand doesn't feel empty." Once Finn is dispatched, Holly says, "Puck, I'm stepping so badly over the line here that I might never return, but there's quite a few people who don't care to have you on the beach. I'm not sure if you've heard. I think of Peg Grattan telling me not to let anyone else tighten my girth. I lose my appetite for my sticky breakfast." I have an inkling. There's genuine worry in George Holly's face. "You're the first, aren't you? The first woman?" It's strange to be called a woman, but I nod. "It just sounds quite bad down there," he says. "I wouldn't say anything if I didn't think it seemed dangerous." How quickly George Holly's become one of us, that I should be riding in a race against a few dozen Kobelushka, and he thinks it's the men I should be worried about. "I know not to trust anyone," I say, "except—" Holly studies my face. "You do fancy him, don't you? What a strange, wonderful, repressed place this is." I glare at him, relieved that I seem to be out of blushes, or perhaps I'm still blushing and can't get any redder. I'm not the one letting myself be played by 3 sisters with 4.5 eyes between them. Holly laughs delightedly. "Very true. Dove strives for my November cake, and I push her away with my elbow. Annie's all right," I say. "Do you think she's pretty?" "I do." "I reckon she finds you agreeable too," I say. I glance at him sideways with a sly smile. "Since she can't see any farther than her arm. I wouldn't count on her baking you any of these cakes, though. There's a reason Paulson's full of women. Thisbe women are lazy." "Lazy as you? Just about? I think I could bear that." He glances up. Finn has just broached the door of Paulson's bearing 2 bags, and he approaches us looking cheerful. Holly says to me, "I sure do wish you the best of luck, Miss Connolly. And I hope you won't wait for Sean Kendrick to realize that he's lonely." I want to ask him, wait for what? But Finn's come up then, and it's not a question I want to ask in front of one of my brothers. So we merely exchange pleasantries, and Holly goes on his way to watch the training on the beach. I go my way to get Dove to the cliff top, and Finn gets ready to go back to Dory Maud's to do odd jobs. "Did you hear his accent?" Finn asks. "I wasn't born deaf. If I were Gabe, I'd go to America instead of to the mainland." This statement ruins any good mood I had germinating in my soul. "If you were Gabe, I'd slap you." Finn is unperturbed. He gives Dove's rump a friendly pat before starting away. "Hey," I stop him and remove another 2 cakes from the bag. "Now go." He trots gleefully off, so easily pleased by the arrival of food. I balance my cakes in one hand and take Dove's reins with the others, leading her toward the cliffs. I think about George Holly's comment about food tasting better in memories. It strikes me as a strange, luxurious statement. It assumes you'll have not only that moment when you take the first bite, but then enough moments in front of it for that mouthful to become a memory. My future's not that certain that I can afford to wonder what will become of the taste later. And in any case, the November cake tastes plenty sweet to me now. Thank you for joining us for Chapter 49 and 50. Once again, make sure you check out the comments section, and don't forget to log your time for our summer reading challenge. We'll see you next time.